At 2:23 a.m., 3 Ukrainian drones skimmed 3 meters above the Black Sea at 180 kilometers per hour, invisible to Russian radar. Their target? A $100 million Russian spy ship that had been strangling Ukraine's entire naval drone program for 6 weeks. This ship could hear a radio transmission from Romania. Its computers were days away from predicting every Ukrainian drone strike, which would have ended the war at sea. But what happened in the next 4 hours rewrote the rules of naval warfare forever. A $10,000 Plywood drone versus Russia's most sophisticated intelligence vessel, a decoy fleet that fooled an entire helicopter squadron, and a final strike so precise it turned cutting-edge Russian technology into a Salvador Dali painting. This is the mission nobody saw coming, and you won't believe how it ends. The Russian spy ship sat 15 miles off Novorossiysk, its R-381T antenna arrays, listening to everything within 500 kilometers. For 6 weeks, this vessel had been logging Ukrainian drone launch patterns, tracking frequencies, recording flight paths, and building an AI model that could predict strikes before they happened. Russian intelligence was 72 hours away from cracking the entire system. If they succeeded, Ukraine's most effective weapon would become useless overnight. But Ukrainian intelligence knew this. They'd been watching the watchers, studying Russian helicopter response times, mapping radar blind spots, and planning something audacious. The mission launched at 2:15 a.m. from 3 separate sites along the Ukrainian coast. But here's where it gets interesting. Those weren't the real attack. 20 decoy drones launched simultaneously toward Sevastopol at 80 kilometers per hour. These were modified jet skis and cheap commercial boats fitted with basic guidance systems. Each one cost less than $10,000. Throwaway assets designed to look exactly like Ukrainian naval drones on Russian radar. They transmitted the right radio signatures, moved at attack speed, and followed realistic assault formations. To Russian radar operators staring at their screens, this looked like the largest naval drone assault since October 2022. Russian doctrine is predictable when facing visible threats. 6 Ka-27 helicopters scrambled from Novorossiysk, racing west at 270 kilometers per hour. These helicopters are the Black Sea Fleet's primary defense against naval drones. They can cover 100 kilometers in 20 minutes, drop depth charges that neutralize everything within 50 meters, and use dipping sonar to hunt underwater threats. But here's the critical mistake. Every minute those helicopters flew west toward the decoys was another minute the real drones flew east completely unopposed. By the time Russian commanders realized the deception, their helicopters would be 360 kilometers out of position with half their fuel burned. The spy ship now had zero air cover, no quick reaction force, and no way to vector helicopters back in time. For the next 2 hours, any drone that penetrated the patrol boat screen would have a clear shot. The 3 real FP-1 drones were different. Their plywood construction gave them a radar cross-section smaller than a seagull, essentially invisible to systems designed to track aluminum aircraft. But the genius wasn't just the wood. Within minutes of launch, their plywood frames cooled to match sea temperature. To Russian thermal cameras, they simply vanished. A Russian 4-post R reconnaissance drone spotted them briefly at 2:45 a.m. The operator zoomed in, watched 3 small contacts drop to 2 meters above water and disappear into ground clutter. He logged them as possible birds and continued his patrol, never knowing he'd just let through the vanguard of an attack. Behind the drones, Russian Shahed munitions found their launch site, arriving just minutes after the FP-1s cleared the area. The operators barely escaped as 50-kilogram warheads destroyed their equipment, but the drones were already gone, racing across the Black Sea at maximum speed. Now comes the invisible battlefield. The Ukrainians had discovered something through months of observation. Russia operated 2 Podlet K1 radar stations covering this sector. Each radar rotated at exactly 10 revolutions per minute, creating a 4-second window every minute when both radars pointed away from the same 2-kilometer corridor. It was like 2 searchlights spinning in circles with one brief dark corner. But the Russians had adapted, implementing random desynchronization to eliminate predictable blind spots. The corridor was shrinking. The first drone entered at 4:47 a.m., 4 seconds invisible, 2 seconds visible as one radar swept past, then invisible again. The operator saw a brief contact, logged it, and moved on. The second drone followed 30 seconds behind. But the third developed a problem. A microscopic flaw in its autopilot gyroscope caused it to drift 200 meters off course. At 4:49 a.m., it corrected hard, burning precious fuel. Both radars painted it clearly, but the operator was tracking 20 confirmed targets at Sevastopol versus one questionable blip. He marked it probable bird. The third drone had made it through, but that maneuver cost 12 minutes of fuel. It would reach the target with less than 60 seconds remaining. At 500 hours, the decoy fleet performed its final act. As Russian helicopters closed to engagement range, the 20 fake drones scattered in every direction. Some beached themselves on empty coastline. Others circled until fuel ran out. A few simply stopped. None attempted to reach actual targets because their job was already done. The helicopters spent another hour hunting stragglers, burning fuel and ammunition on drones that cost less than a single depth charge. Meanwhile, the real attack was entering its final phase. At 600 hours, the lead FP-1's GPS began sliding east. The drone wasn't turning. Reality was being rewritten. Russians had activated their R-330 system, broadcasting fake GPS signals 1,000,000 times stronger than real satellites. But Ukrainian operators had learned this trick. Every 50 kilometers, oil platforms dotted the Black Sea. The drone's cameras could spot these from 5 kilometers away, resetting position based on preloaded coordinates. No amount of electronic warfare can beat visual navigation. The second drone wasn't so lucky. At 6:15 a.m., its GPS receiver died from a faulty Chinese capacitor. Without GPS, it switched to inertial navigation, accumulating 10 meters of error per minute. 8 kilometers off course, it hit the water and disappeared. 2 drones remained. At 7:23 a.m., the Russian spy ship went active with its mineral ME radar, painting the western approaches. They detected the lead drone at 15 kilometers out. The ship's radar locked on, but here's where wood beats technology. Radar algorithms expect sharp returns from aluminum hulls. Wood gives mushy, inconsistent returns. The radar kept losing lock. The operator reported intermittent contact, possibly birds. Meanwhile, the third drone made a calculated decision. It shut down everything except its mechanical gyroscope, flying blind on compass heading alone to avoid detection. At 7:30 a.m., the lead drone reached the target area. A patrol boat spotted it visually at 500 meters. The PKM machine gun opened fire. 3 rounds hit, punching clean holes through wood. One clipped the propeller. The engine vibrated violently but kept running. 90 seconds of fuel remaining. Every Russian eye tracked this damaged drone as it struggled toward the ship. Nobody was looking northwest. The third FP-1 emerged from morning fog at 7:34 a.m., approaching from the port bow at 180 kilometers per hour, 10 meters above water. The ship's navigation radar couldn't depress below -5 degrees. The designers never imagined something would attack from this angle. A Russian lookout spotted it at 300 meters. Too late. The drone's camera centered on the bridge roof where the mast housed 3 special antennas worth more than the entire Ukrainian drone program. The 25-kilogram warhead smashed into the mast base at 7:35 a.m. The explosion gutted the bridge instantly. The R-381T arrays that could hear whispers across 500 kilometers melted into slag. The computers containing 6 weeks of carefully gathered intelligence, the patterns that would have ended Ukraine's drone operations, the AI predictions that were 72 hours from deployment, all gone in a fireball. Secondary explosions cascaded through power supplies as fires raged for 18 hours. When the smoke cleared, Russia's most sophisticated electronic warfare ship looked like modern art. The vessel would eventually sail again, but its electronic eyes and ears were permanently destroyed. Within hours, Ukrainian drones were launching from new locations with completely new patterns, invisible once again to Russian intelligence. The spy ship could still float, but it could no longer spy. Russia could still hit launch sites, but now they were bombing empty fields because the patterns were erased. Here's what this mission proved. A $10,000 wooden drone with visual navigation defeated a $100 million spy ship with the most advanced radar systems money can buy. Sometimes the simplest solution beats the most sophisticated technology. The rules of naval warfare changed that morning, and Russia learned an expensive lesson. In modern conflict, you don't need the best equipment. You need the smartest strategy. If you want to see how technology is reshaping warfare, subscribe now because the future is already here, and it's made of plywood.